the story of Albert Einstein begins not with a burst of brilliance, but with silence. A quiet child, lost in thought, wandering through the corridors of imagination long before the world would know his name. Born on March 14, 1879 in Ulm, Germany, he entered a world on the edge of a new century, a world full of mechanical invention, discovery, and transformation. Yet, the young Einstein seemed to belong to another realm entirely. His eyes, large and observant, seemed to stare not merely at what was in front of him, but through it, beyond it, into the invisible threads that tied everything together. Those who met him as a boy often misunderstood him. Teachers complained that he was slow, inattentive, and stubborn. But behind that silence was not a lack of understanding. It was the calm stillness of a mind deeply occupied with wonder. From his earliest days, Einstein questioned everything. When he was just 5 years old, he fell ill and was confined to bed. To comfort him, his father brought him a small magnetic compass. The little boy watched the needle swing and point north, no matter how he turned it. That simple moment, so ordinary to most, ignited a spark that would never fade. Why, he wondered, did the needle move without touching anything? What invisible force guided it? It was his first encounter with the unseen laws of nature, and it left him in awe. That compass became more than an object, it became a symbol of mystery and truth. Even as an old man, Einstein would recall that moment as the beginning of his lifelong fascination with the hidden workings of the universe. As he grew, the world around him seemed full of questions waiting to be solved. He would gaze at the light filtering through the window and ask himself what light truly was. He would imagine riding alongside a beam of light, trying to see what the universe would look like from that impossible perspective. This simple thought experiment, born in the mind of a curious teenager, would later become one of the cornerstones of his greatest theory. But at that time it was only a dream, one of many that danced through the imagination of a boy who refused to stop asking, why? In school, Einstein's curiosity often clashed with the rigid expectations of his teachers. The education system in Germany was strict and authoritative, demanding memorization and obedience. Einstein, however, was restless. He hated rote learning and resisted any form of blind discipline. He wanted to understand, not repeat. His mind demanded freedom, not rules. When teachers asked him to follow their methods, he would question the purpose behind them. This constant questioning was mistaken for defiance. One teacher famously told him, "You will never amount to anything." But Einstein's defiance was not born of arrogance. It was born of integrity, the belief that true understanding comes not from obedience, but from exploration. At home, his parents recognized something special in their son, though they didn't always understand it. His father, Hermann Einstein, was an engineer who ran a small company that supplied electrical equipment. His mother, Pauline, was a musician, deeply passionate about art and sound. From her, Albert inherited not only a love for music, but also a sense of emotional depth and beauty. He learned to play the violin, finding in it both peace and expression. Music became a companion to his thoughts, a bridge between emotion and intellect. When words or equations failed to express the vastness of his imagination, music did. He often said that if he had not been a physicist, he would have become a musician. For him, both fields were ways of seeking harmony, one through notes, the other through numbers. His childhood was not without loneliness. Einstein often found himself misunderstood, both by peers and adults. While other children played simple games, he was absorbed in thought experiments that seemed beyond his years. He would sit for hours, thinking about invisible forces, about motion, about time. Sometimes he would forget to eat or play, lost in the dance of his own mind. But that solitude was his sanctuary. It was in silence that his imagination grew strongest. Einstein once said, "I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination." Imagination is more important than knowledge. Those words were not the reflection of an adult genius. They were born in the quiet wonder of his youth. His family later moved to Munich, where he attended the Luitpold Gymnasium. The strict Prussian-style education suffocated his spirit. Teachers valued discipline over curiosity, recitation over reasoning. Einstein often clashed with this environment. He could not accept truths simply because they were written in a book. He needed to feel them, to see them, to understand their essence. One of his teachers once remarked, "Your mere presence spoils the respect of the class for me." For most children, such criticism would have been crushing. But Einstein was different. He withdrew further into his own world, building an inner universe where curiosity ruled and questions had no limits. At the age of 15, Einstein's education took an unexpected turn. His father's business failed, forcing the family to move to Italy. Albert stayed behind to complete his studies, but soon grew restless and disillusioned. He left school without a diploma, wandering to join his family in Milan. To many, this was a failure. But for Einstein, it was liberation. In the sunlit streets of Italy, surrounded by art, architecture, and freedom, his imagination expanded once more. He spent hours reading scientific books on his own, teaching himself what schools refused to. He devoured the writings of great physicists like Maxwell and Newton, but he did not accept their words blindly. He questioned them, challenged them, imagined beyond them. That ability, to question even the greatest minds, was what set Einstein apart. Even during his teenage years, Einstein was already forming ideas that would later shake the foundations of physics. He was fascinated by the nature of light and motion. He imagined himself chasing a ray of light, moving alongside it at the same speed. What would he see? Would the waves stand still, frozen in space? Such thoughts, seemingly childlike in their simplicity, carried profound implications. This playful imagination would one day lead him to formulate the theory of relativity, but at that time, it was simply an adventure of thought, a mental game that blended wonder and logic. Einstein's mind was a symphony of curiosity. Every moment of his life was filled with questions. Why does time move forward and not backward? What is gravity truly made of? What is energy? And where does it go when things move or stop? His ability to imagine beyond the visible world was extraordinary. He didn't just study the universe, he felt it. He could close his eyes and see himself floating among the stars, watching the planets curve through space. He was not bound by the limitations of what was possible, he was guided by what was imaginable. During these early years, Einstein's reading shaped his worldview. One of the books that profoundly influenced him was Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant, which explored the nature of human understanding. Though complex, Einstein absorbed its ideas about perception and reality. He began to see that the universe might not exist exactly as we perceive it. Our senses, our minds, all are filters through which reality passes. This idea fascinated him deeply and would later influence his theories on relativity and observation. His uncle, Jacob Einstein, also played an important role in nurturing his curiosity. Jacob was an engineer, and he introduced Albert to algebra and geometry. He showed him how mathematical language could describe the behavior of the physical world. For Einstein, mathematics became a new form of art, a precise tool for expressing beauty hidden in the laws of nature. He found joy in solving problems, not for grades, but for the thrill of discovery. He once said, "Pure mathematics is, in its way, the poetry of logical ideas." To him, every equation was a story, every symbol a note in the grand symphony of the cosmos. At the same time, Einstein was developing an independent mind that resisted authority in all forms. He questioned religion, politics, and social norms. His parents were Jewish, but Einstein did not follow traditional religious beliefs. Instead, he developed a sense of cosmic spirituality, an awe toward the universe itself. He saw in nature a deep, harmonious order that transcended dogma. He once wrote that he believed in Spinoza's God, a God who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists, not one who concerns himself with the fates and actions of humans. Even as a child, he found spirituality not in rituals, but in the wonder of existence itself. By the time he reached his late teens, Einstein's inner world was vast, He had cultivated a mind that could think abstractly, visualize complex concepts, and feel emotion for the beauty of truth. His imagination was both scientific and poetic. He often walked alone by rivers or through the countryside, letting his thoughts wander freely. He would imagine the movement of light, the bending of space, and the ticking of clocks in distant places. To others, it might have seemed like daydreaming, but for Einstein, this was the purest form of thinking. His thoughts were his laboratory, and his imagination was his instrument. Einstein's curiosity also extended to the human condition. He often wondered about the nature of happiness, freedom, and morality. As a young man, he believed that curiosity should not only lead to scientific truth, but also to wisdom. He saw learning as a way to connect with the universe, to become part of something larger than oneself. This balance of intellect and empathy made him unique among scientists. He was not driven by fame or recognition, but by a deep desire to understand how everything fit together: the physical, the emotional, the moral. His early curiosity was not just intellectual, it was deeply emotional. He felt the mysteries of the universe with his heart as much as with his mind. When he encountered a problem, he didn't simply analyze it, he lived inside it, feeling every nuance until the answer revealed itself. This emotional connection to inquiry gave his discoveries a rare depth. When he looked at the stars, he didn't see distant fires burning in space. He saw the handwriting of the cosmos, the rhythm of creation itself. Every great discovery begins with curiosity, but Einstein's curiosity had no boundaries. It was fearless. It did not shy away from the impossible. He once said, "The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing." That reason was evident from his earliest days. Even before he knew what physics truly was, he was already a physicist in spirit, a child scientist guided by intuition and awe. His curiosity also made him a lifelong learner. Even as he grew older, he never lost that childlike wonder. He believed that to remain creative, one must never stop being amazed by the world. In his later years, when asked how he came up with his theories, he replied, "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious." That passion had been with him from the moment he first held the compass in his hands, from the moment he looked at light and saw eternity in its motion. The early years of Albert Einstein's life were not filled with the success that history remembers. They were filled with questions, with solitude, with resistance, but within that quiet struggle, something magnificent was taking shape, a mind that would one day shake the foundations of human understanding. His imagination, born from curiosity, would eventually transform into the most powerful tool of discovery the world had ever seen. He would later recall his childhood as a time of awakening, a slow unfolding of awareness that the universe was not a fixed, solid thing, but a living mystery waiting to be understood. Every day brought a new question, every question a new path. His imagination was not a distraction from reality, it was a way of seeing it more deeply. And though the world would take decades to recognize it, the seeds of genius had already been sown in the young boy who once stared at a compass and wondered about the invisible. As Albert Einstein entered the next stage of his youth, his mind was already a world of questions and possibilities. Each thought seemed to open a doorway into a new mystery, and he walked through them fearlessly. For Einstein, thinking was not an activity, it was his nature. His imagination had become the lens through which he viewed everything around him. Where others saw ordinary moments, he saw patterns, relationships, and invisible forces shaping reality. He could not simply accept that the sun rose and set. He wanted to understand the rhythm behind that motion, the silent mathematics that made the universe breathe. When Einstein was 16, he experienced a thought that would later become one of the most famous moments in the history of science. He imagined himself chasing a beam of light through space. If he could move at the speed of light, what would that light wave look like to him? Would it appear frozen? Would it still vibrate? This mental image haunted him for years. It was simple, almost like a dream, but it contained within it the seeds of relativity, the idea that time, space, and motion were not absolute but intertwined. Few people could have imagined that a teenage boy's daydream would one day reshape the entire foundation of modern physics. But at that time, Einstein was not thinking of fame or recognition or history. He was simply curious. His imagination was his playground, and the universe was his game. He loved to challenge himself with puzzles that no one else had considered. He would ask himself, what happens if I fall into a mirror? Or, if I ride on a lightning bolt, what will I see? His thoughts were alive with wonder, with a sense of infinite possibility. This was the magic of his early mind, its ability to merge playfulness with profound reasoning. When his family's financial troubles forced him to leave Germany for Switzerland, Einstein's intellectual freedom found a new home. In the city of Aarau, he attended a more liberal school where creativity and independent thinking were encouraged. The rigid structure of German education was replaced with open discussion, and for the first time, Einstein thrived in a classroom. He was treated not as a disobedient student, but as a thinker. He spent hours absorbed in mathematics, physics, and philosophy, often losing track of time. His teachers there saw what others had missed: a mind that could connect ideas in ways no one else could. In Aarau, Einstein also began to think more deeply about time itself. He would imagine two clocks ticking in different places, one moving fast and the other slow, and he would ask himself whether they could ever truly stay in sync. To him, time was not an absolute flow. It was something relative, something tied to the observer. These were the first ripples of the ideas that would later become the special theory of relativity. But for young Albert, they were simply questions, beautiful, mysterious questions that filled his nights with excitement. Einstein's curiosity was not limited to science. He was fascinated by art, literature, and the human spirit. He read deeply from the works of great philosophers like Kant and Schopenhauer. He reflected on the meaning of truth and the limits of human perception. He wondered whether there were universal patterns not only in physics but in life itself. His interest in philosophy did not distract him from science, it enriched it. It gave his imagination moral and emotional depth. He believed that understanding the universe was not just an intellectual pursuit, but a deeply human one. Despite his growing intellect, Einstein's path remained uncertain. He failed to secure admission to the Zurich Polytechnic on his first attempt, struggling particularly with subjects he found dull or mechanical. But failure did not discourage him. He simply returned to his books, taught himself what he lacked, and tried again. When he was finally accepted into the institution, it became a new world of discovery. Surrounded by bright minds and inspired teachers, Einstein continued to develop the fearless curiosity that had guided him since childhood. Yet even in university, Einstein remained unconventional. He often skipped lectures, preferring to study on his own. He found that his best ideas came not from notes or textbooks, but from solitary reflection. His professors sometimes grew impatient with him, calling him lazy or distracted. But Einstein was not lazy. He was simply thinking in his own way. He once told a friend, "One never notices what has been done, one can only see what remains to be done." For him, learning was not about memorizing answers. It was about exploring the unknown. In his free time, Einstein continued to perform thought experiments. He imagined light bouncing between mirrors on a moving train. He pictured observers on the ground and on the train disagreeing about when the light reached each mirror. In these imagined scenarios, he was laying the groundwork for a new understanding of reality. Every question led to another, every discovery to a deeper mystery. What made Einstein's imagination so extraordinary was not just its creativity, but its discipline. His dreams were not vague fantasies, they were structured, logical, and deeply rooted in observation. Einstein's curiosity was also shaped by empathy. He saw the beauty of nature as something sacred, something that demanded respect and humility. He would walk for hours in the mountains, observing the flow of rivers, the dance of clouds, the patterns of stars. Nature spoke to him in a language beyond words, and he listened. This sense of unity between the human mind and the cosmos would later inspire his belief in a cosmic religion, a spirituality grounded in awe and understanding rather than faith or ritual. In those early years, Einstein's imagination became his greatest refuge. The world around him was often harsh and uncertain. His family struggled financially, his future was unclear. But within his imagination, he found infinite freedom. He could travel anywhere, see anything, understand everything. That mental freedom sustained him, giving him strength when the world seemed indifferent. His ideas were not born from privilege or comfort. They were born from persistence, curiosity, and love for truth. There is something deeply human in the story of young Einstein, a reminder that great minds are not born in laboratories, but in wonder. Before the equations and theories, before the fame and recognition, there was simply a boy staring at the stars, trying to understand how the universe works. His questions were pure, his curiosity boundless. That childlike sense of discovery never left him. Even in his later years, when his hair had turned white and his name had become legend, he still approached every mystery with the same awe he felt as a child holding that compass. Einstein's early curiosity also reflected a profound sense of independence. He did not allow others to define the limits of his thinking. When people told him something was impossible, he sought to prove otherwise. He distrusted authority, not out of rebellion, but out of belief that truth must be tested, not accepted. That independent streak was both his challenge and his gift. It isolated him at times, but it also gave him the courage to explore ideas no one else dared to. There were moments of doubt, of course. Einstein often felt lost in a world that did not understand him. He once wrote that he felt like a lonely wanderer, far removed from the rest. Yet even in that loneliness he found purpose. Solitude was his companion, his quiet space to think and dream. He transformed isolation into inspiration, using silence as the soil in which his imagination grew. His curiosity was also guided by a kind of moral compass. He believed that knowledge must serve humanity. Even as a young man, he was aware of the ethical weight of discovery. He once said, "Concern for man and his fate must always form the chief interest of all technical endeavors." For Einstein, curiosity was not just about uncovering the laws of physics, it was about deepening the understanding of what it means to be human. When Einstein graduated from the Polytechnic, his brilliance was undeniable, but he still struggled to find work. Many universities rejected him. Professors he had once challenged refused to recommend him. He ended up working as a clerk at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern, a modest job that, ironically, gave him the quiet space he needed. It was there, in the humdrum rhythm of office life, that his imagination reached its peak. While reviewing patents for electrical devices, his mind wandered into the vastness of the cosmos. The patience and curiosity of his youth now bore fruit. He began to connect the fragments of his lifelong questions into a unified vision of reality. That same imagination that had puzzled his teachers and parents now became the engine of scientific revolution. He still thought in pictures, in vivid mental images. He would close his eyes and see clocks, light beams, and stars bending through space. His thoughts were alive with movement and music. It was as though the universe itself was revealing its secrets through his mind. In 1905, the miracle year that changed everything, Einstein published 4 papers that transformed physics. Among them was the special theory of relativity, the full realization of the idea that had begun when a curious boy imagined chasing a beam of light. The journey from that childhood thought to the finished theory spanned nearly 20 years of imagination, questioning, and persistence. It was not born from laboratories or instruments. It was born from the pure power of thought. The world was astonished, but Einstein remained humble. He saw his discoveries not as conquests but as gifts given by curiosity and imagination. He often said that the most beautiful experience one can have is the mysterious. To him, mystery was not something to fear, but something to embrace, to explore endlessly. Even as fame surrounded him, Einstein never lost the spirit of the curious child he once was. He continued to ask questions that others overlooked. When the world celebrated his theories, he quietly turned to new puzzles. About gravity, about the nature of the universe, about unity in the laws of physics. His curiosity was eternal, and his imagination unending. Looking back at his life, one sees a clear truth: the imagination of his youth shaped the destiny of science. Without that restless curiosity, without those early questions about light and time, the modern understanding of the universe might never have been born. Einstein proved that imagination is not a childish pastime, it is the foundation of progress. Every great leap in human knowledge begins with a simple question, and every question begins with curiosity. In the end, the young boy who stared at a compass became the man who redefined the universe. But in his heart, he never stopped being that boy. His curiosity remained pure, his imagination vivid, his wonder alive. And through him, the world learned that to think deeply, to question fearlessly, and to imagine endlessly is to be truly human. Einstein's early years were not a prelude. They were the essence of his genius. They remind us that greatness does not come from knowing all the answers, but from having the courage to ask the impossible questions. In every child who looks at the stars and wonders why they shine, in every mind that dares to dream of what lies beyond, there is a spark of Einstein, a spark of the thinker who shook the world with nothing but curiosity and imagination. When Albert Einstein began to explore the mysteries of the universe, he was not armed with laboratories, assistants, or machines. He had only his mind, his imagination, and an unshakable desire to understand the hidden order of reality. The early spark of curiosity that had driven him as a child now evolved into a relentless pursuit of truth. He was no longer content with merely asking questions. He wanted answers that could explain not just the motion of the stars, but the rhythm of existence itself. The world of science was standing on the foundation of Isaac Newton's laws, which had ruled for more than 2 centuries. According to Newton, space and time were absolute, unchanging backdrops against which all events unfolded. Every scientist of the 19th century believed this to be an unquestionable truth. But Einstein saw cracks in this certainty, and through those cracks, he glimpsed something far greater. The story of how Einstein changed our understanding of space and time begins not in a grand observatory, but in a quiet office in Bern, Switzerland. It was 1905, a year that would later be called his Annus Mirabilis, or Miracle Year. Einstein was working at the Swiss Patent Office, reviewing applications for electrical devices. It was a simple, unremarkable job, yet it gave him something that universities and laboratories could not time to think. In the stillness of that office, surrounded by stacks of papers and mechanical diagrams, Einstein's mind traveled far beyond the Earth. He imagined the universe itself, its rules, its secrets, its unseen dimensions. For years he had been troubled by contradictions between 2 pillars of physics, Newton's laws of motion and James Clerk Maxwell's equations of electromagnetism. According to Maxwell, light always moved through space at the same speed, no matter how fast the observer was moving. But according to Newton's logic, speeds should add up. If you were moving toward a beam of light, you should measure it as moving faster. Yet experiments showed that this wasn't the case. The speed of light was always the same in every direction to every observer. It made no sense. The brightest minds of the time tried to explain this by inventing the concept of an invisible substance called ether, which supposedly filled the universe and carried light waves. But Einstein wasn't satisfied with that. He believed nature was simpler and more elegant than that. He began to ask a radical question. What if the problem wasn't with light, but with our understanding of space and time themselves? What if space and time were not absolute, not fixed backgrounds, but part of a single, flexible reality? This was an idea so daring that most would have dismissed it as madness. But for Einstein it felt like the only way forward. He trusted his thought experiments more than the accepted truths of textbooks, and so, He returned to one of his earliest imaginings, the image of himself chasing a beam of light. He imagined again that he was moving alongside a light wave. If he could keep up with it, what would he see? Would the light freeze in place? According to Maxwell's equations, that was impossible. Light could never stand still. Something had to give. After months of relentless thinking, he found the answer. It was not light that changed. It was time and space themselves. The universe, he realized, had a built-in speed limit, the speed of light. Nothing could move faster. And to preserve that constant speed for all observers, time and space must bend and stretch depending on motion. This revelation was breathtaking. It meant that time was not universal. Two people moving at different speeds could experience time differently, and both would be right. Clocks could tick at different rates, distances could shrink, and simultaneity, the idea that two events can happen at the same time, was no longer absolute. Everything depended on your frame of reference. Time and space were woven together in a single fabric that could flex, twist, and change. In June 1905, Einstein published a paper titled On the Electrodynamics of Moving Bodies. It was a quiet revolution. There were no grand claims, no poetic introductions, just clear, logical reasoning that turned the entire concept of reality upside down. That paper introduced what would later be known as the special theory of relativity. It explained how the laws of physics are the same for all observers, regardless of their motion, and how the speed of light remains constant in every reference frame. At first, few understood it. Even among scientists, Einstein's ideas seemed abstract and strange. How could time slow down? How could distances shrink? How could two observers see the same events differently and both be correct? The answers lay not in fantasy, but in the structure of reality itself. Time, Einstein showed, was not a river flowing at the same rate for everyone. It was more like a stretchable fabric that could expand or contract depending on motion. If you traveled near the speed of light, time for you would slow down relative to someone standing still. You could, in theory, journey across the universe and return to find that centuries had passed for others while only years had passed for you. The universe was far more flexible, mysterious, and interconnected than anyone had ever imagined. Einstein's theory also revealed one of the most famous equations in history, E=mc. It expressed a stunning truth, that energy and mass are two sides of the same coin. Mass can be converted into energy, and energy into mass. It was a revelation that would later shape nuclear power, the understanding of stars, and the creation of atomic weapons. But at its heart, it was a statement about the unity of nature. Everything, from the tiniest particle to the largest galaxy, was connected through this elegant equivalence. The beauty of Einstein's ideas lay in their simplicity and universality. He had taken two seemingly contradictory laws, Newton's mechanics and Maxwell's electromagnetism, and harmonized them through a new understanding of time and space. The consequences were profound. The universe was no longer a static stage on which events played out. It was an active, dynamic fabric that responded to motion, energy, and gravity. But even as Einstein celebrated his discoveries, he knew that his work was incomplete. The special theory of relativity applied only to objects moving at constant speeds, not to those accelerating or to gravitational fields. Gravity, the great force that guided planets and shaped the cosmos, was still described by Newton's laws. Einstein's next mission would be to reconcile gravity with relativity, to understand how mass could bend not just space, but the very flow of time. That quest would take him a decade and lead to one of the most remarkable scientific achievements in history, the general theory of relativity. But before he reached that summit, Einstein faced skepticism and isolation. Many of his contemporaries dismissed his ideas as theoretical fantasy. Yet Einstein remained calm, patient, and quietly confident. He often said that imagination was more important than knowledge, because knowledge tells us what is, while imagination tells us what can be. His imagination had already revealed a universe far stranger and more beautiful than anyone had conceived. In the years following 1905, Scientists began to test Einstein's predictions. They found that time really did slow down at high speeds, and that mass increased with motion, just as he had said. Slowly, the scientific world began to understand that Einstein had not merely written a theory, he had discovered a new reality. His work changed not just physics, but philosophy itself. It forced humanity to rethink the meaning of truth, observation, and experience. Space and time, once thought to be separate and absolute, were now seen as inseparable and relative. This realization transformed everything from how we understand motion to how we navigate the stars. The GPS satellites that orbit Earth today must correct their clocks for both the effects of motion and gravity, precisely because of Einstein's theories. Without those corrections, they would drift out of sync, and navigation would fail within hours. Every time a phone guides someone through a city, it is quietly relying on the genius of a man who once dreamed of chasing a beam of light. Einstein's transformation of space and time was not just scientific, it was philosophical and even spiritual. It showed that reality was not rigid but fluid, not mechanical but dynamic. The universe, he discovered, was a living system of relationships, where every motion, every force, and every point of view shaped the whole. For Einstein, this interconnectedness was a source of profound wonder. He often said that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible, that human minds, born from stardust, could understand the very fabric of existence. As the implications of relativity spread, the world began to change. The boundaries between science and imagination blurred. Einstein became not only a scientist, but a symbol of a new way of thinking. He had shown that reality could be deeper and stranger than anyone imagined, and that by daring to question the obvious, one could uncover truths that change everything. But beneath the fame and admiration, Einstein remained the same quiet thinker. He was still the man who preferred simplicity to luxury, silence to applause. The more he understood the universe, the more he felt humbled by its mystery. He once said, "A human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. We experience ourselves as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness." To him, the discovery of relativity was not just about equations. It was about realizing that everything in existence was connected through the same cosmic fabric. In the years following his discovery, Einstein's theories began to influence fields far beyond physics. Philosophers debated the nature of time and reality, artists drew inspiration from the idea of perspective and relativity, and poets spoke of a universe where motion and perception shaped meaning. The world was waking up to a new dimension of thought. Einstein himself continued to refine his ideas, driven not by ambition, but by a need for harmony. He believed that the universe must be consistent, that its laws must form a perfect, elegant pattern. His pursuit of that unity became a lifelong quest. But the foundation of everything, the key that unlocked the door to modern physics, was born in those early revolutionary years when he redefined space and time. The young man from Ulm, once dismissed by teachers and ignored by employers, had rewritten the laws of reality. He had shown that time could stretch, space could bend, and that the universe was not what it seemed. His theories did not just change science, they changed humanity's understanding of existence itself. The world would never again see space and time as empty, lifeless dimensions. They had become living, breathing elements of a universe that danced to the rhythm of relativity. As Einstein's ideas began to spread, the world of science entered a new era, one where imagination and mathematics joined hands to unveil the hidden patterns of the cosmos. The old world of Newtonian physics, where everything was seen as absolute and predictable, now stood face to face with a reality that was flexible, dynamic, and woven with mystery. Einstein had cracked open the doors of perception, and what lay beyond was both astonishing and unsettling. Time was no longer a constant rhythm, ticking equally for everyone. It could stretch, slow down, or speed up depending on where you stood and how fast you moved. Space was no longer an empty stage. It was a living fabric that could bend, twist, and ripple. These were ideas that transformed not just physics, but the very way humanity understood existence. When Einstein published his general theory of relativity in 1915, he was not simply adding a new chapter to science, he was rewriting the book itself. He proposed that gravity was not a mysterious force pulling objects together, but a consequence of the warping of space and time by mass and energy. The more massive an object, the more it curved the space around it, and other objects simply followed the natural path through this curved geometry. To visualize it, Einstein described how a heavy ball placed on a stretched rubber sheet would cause smaller balls to roll toward it. Not because they were pulled, but because the surface itself was curved. This visualization, simple yet profound, became one of the most powerful ways to understand his concept. The scientific community at first struggled to accept such a radical departure from Newton's laws, which had worked perfectly for centuries. For Einstein's theory to be accepted, it had to be proven through observation. The opportunity came in 1919 during a solar eclipse. British astronomer Sir Arthur Eddington led an expedition to measure the bending of starlight as it passed near the Sun, a prediction made by Einstein's equations. When the results matched Einstein's calculations, confirming that light itself was deflected by gravity, the world stood in awe. Newspapers across continents declared Einstein a genius overnight.
Headlines read Revolution in Science!
Newtonian ideas overthrown. The patent clerk who once struggled for recognition had become a global icon. Yet Einstein's success was more than a scientific victory, it was a triumph of imagination over convention. He had shown that even the most fundamental truths about the universe were not fixed, but could be reimagined through thought. In a world recovering from war and chaos, his ideas offered a new kind of hope, a reminder that progress is born from questioning, not from accepting. Scientists, artists, and thinkers alike were inspired by the boldness of his vision. The boundaries between science and philosophy began to blur, for Einstein's theories touched not only on how the universe worked, but also on what it meant to exist within it. Relativity brought with it strange and mind-bending consequences. Time was no longer universal. Two people moving at different speeds could experience time differently, and yet both would be correct in their own frame of reference. The faster you traveled, the slower your time would pass compared to someone standing still. It was an idea that challenged common sense, but was mathematically and experimentally sound. Later experiments with atomic clocks and high-speed particles would prove Einstein right again and again. Even today, our GPS satellites adjust for time differences predicted by relativity, ensuring accuracy in navigation systems used worldwide. Without Einstein's understanding of time dilation, your smartphone's GPS would drift by miles every day. But Einstein was not satisfied with shaking the foundations of physics once. He continued to probe deeper into the mysteries of nature. He began to explore how energy and matter were connected, and in doing so, he formulated one of the most famous equations in human history, E tum and C dives. This small formula carried a universe of meaning. It revealed that mass could be converted into energy and energy into mass. It was a principle that later became the cornerstone of nuclear physics, powering the sun, the stars, and eventually, humanity's own experiments with atomic energy. Though Einstein himself never sought its destructive use, the equation symbolized the immense power locked within the tiniest particles of matter. The consequences of Einstein's work extended far beyond laboratories. His theories reshaped astronomy, cosmology, and even philosophy. The concept of a curved universe gave rise to new models of how the cosmos began and how it might end. Later scientists built upon his equations to explore black holes, regions where space and time collapse into singularities, and to understand the expansion of the universe itself. Without Einstein's insights, modern cosmology as we know it would not exist. He turned the universe from a static, mechanical clock into a dynamic, evolving entity full of possibilities and paradoxes. Yet behind every breakthrough was the same humble man who believed imagination was the highest form of intelligence. Einstein often said, "I have no special talent, I am only passionately curious." This humility reflected his approach to discovery. For him, science was not about dominance or control. It was about wonder, about standing before the mysteries of creation and daring to ask why. Even as the world celebrated him as a hero, Einstein remained a thinker devoted to truth, not fame. He often shied away from the spotlight, preferring the quiet solitude of his study, where he could lose himself in equations that revealed the poetry of the universe. Einstein's revolutionary theories did not only transform physics, they also changed the way humanity perceived its own place in the cosmos. The universe was no longer a predictable machine, but a vast, interconnected web of forces, energies, and curves. Time and space were no longer the background of existence. They were active players in the story of creation. This realization brought both awe and humility, reminding humanity that we are part of a much grander design, one that continues to unfold in ways we can barely comprehend. The philosophical impact of Einstein's ideas rippled through the 20th century. Artists began to experiment with abstract forms, inspired by the relativity of perception. Writers and filmmakers explored themes of time travel, parallel realities, and the distortion of space and time. Even musicians found resonance in the rhythm of relativity, where everything was connected by invisible harmonies. Einstein had unknowingly inspired a cultural shift, where creativity and science danced together in a new symphony of thought. As years passed, Einstein continued to refine his theories, searching for a deeper unity behind all natural forces. He dreamed of a unified field theory, a single framework that could explain everything from gravity to electromagnetism. Though he never completed it, his pursuit inspired generations of scientists to continue the quest. Today, physicists working on quantum gravity and string theory are still following the trail he blazed. In many ways, his spirit lives in every scientist who dares to challenge accepted truths and imagine the impossible. Einstein's revolutionary theories were not just scientific achievements, they were acts of courage. To stand against centuries of established thought, to trust one's imagination over authority, required extraordinary conviction. Einstein's mind was a beacon of intellectual freedom, reminding humanity that progress depends on the willingness to question even the most sacred assumptions. His story is proof that a single idea, born from curiosity, can change the direction of civilization. As he once said, "Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one." These words captured the essence of his philosophy. For Einstein, the universe was a grand illusion waiting to be understood, a tapestry of energy, matter, and motion woven together by the laws of relativity. And though he decoded much of its beauty, he always acknowledged that mystery would remain. That humility, that acceptance of the unknown, is what made his genius so deeply human. By the end of his life, Einstein had done more than reshape science. He had reshaped thought itself. He showed that the boundaries between imagination and reality are thinner than we think. His theories changed the way we build, communicate, travel, and explore the universe. They continue to guide satellites in orbit, spacecrafts in deep space, and even the dreams of those who gaze up at the stars, wondering what lies beyond. Albert Einstein did not just explain the universe, he redefined humanity's relationship with it. His revolutionary theories taught us that the cosmos is alive with wonder, that knowledge is infinite, and that every discovery is but a new beginning. Through the lens of relativity, he gave the world a new way to see itself, not as separate pieces, but as one continuous whole, bound together by the threads of time, energy, and imagination. Einstein's revolution was not written in fire or steel, but in light and thought. It continues to echo through every equation, every experiment, and every question that pushes humanity further toward understanding the mysteries of existence. And as long as curiosity survives, so too will the legacy of the man who changed how we see time, space, and ourselves, the thinker who truly shook the world. At the dawn of the 20th century, the world stood on the edge of a scientific awakening, yet it was still bound by the laws that Isaac Newton had written centuries before. Physics was considered nearly complete. The universe, it seemed, was a grand clockwork machine operating with perfect precision, guided by absolute time and unchanging space. But somewhere in that perfect order, a young physicist named Albert Einstein sensed a quiet inconsistency, a faint tremor in the logic that held the cosmos together. That tremor would soon grow into a revolution. From the confines of a small patent office in Bern, Switzerland, Einstein began to question everything that humanity thought it knew about the nature of reality. The theory of relativity did not emerge from laboratories or grand experiments. It was born in the vast landscape of the human mind. Einstein's imagination was his greatest instrument. He often described his thought experiments as journeys through space and time. One of his earliest musings began with a simple question: what would it be like to ride alongside a beam of light? That single question would ignite a chain of ideas that would redefine physics forever. In 1905, Einstein published what would later be known as his special theory of relativity. It was not merely a set of equations. It was a declaration that the universe was far more mysterious and beautiful than anyone had imagined. Einstein proposed that the laws of physics are the same for all observers, no matter how fast they move. More shockingly, he claimed that the speed of light is constant. It never changes, no matter how the observer moves. From these two postulates emerged a new understanding of the cosmos, one that intertwined space and time into a single continuum spacetime. This idea shattered the classical notion of absolute time. According to Newton, time flowed evenly everywhere, an invisible river that carried all events in perfect sequence. But Einstein revealed that time could slow down or speed up depending on motion and gravity. To an observer moving at great speed, time itself would stretch, seconds would pass more slowly compared to someone at rest. This effect, known as time dilation, was not just theory, it was a measurable, physical reality. Space, too, was no longer rigid. It could contract, bend, and stretch, its geometry shaped by the presence of energy and motion. These were ideas so radical that many scientists initially dismissed them as fantasy. But Einstein's mathematics was precise and elegant, and slowly the world began to take notice. The theory of relativity was not only an intellectual masterpiece, it was a philosophical one. It revealed that the observer and the observed were not separate entities, but part of the same dynamic fabric. Reality, as Einstein described it, depended on perspective. The cosmos was not a stage upon which matter moved. It was an actor, changing shape in response to energy and mass. Einstein's ideas did not remain confined to the pages of academic journals. They rippled through every corner of thought. His famous equation, Etam and Cdals, emerged as a direct consequence of relativity, expressing the profound truth that mass and energy are interchangeable. A tiny amount of mass could release enormous energy, and conversely, energy could condense into matter. This was more than mathematics. It was a revelation about the unity of nature. The sun's brilliance, the burning of stars, and the very power that fuels the universe all found their explanation in Einstein's insight. The early 20th century was a time of wonder and upheaval, and Einstein's work reflected both. As cities glowed with electric light and machines conquered the air, humanity began to look at itself through a new lens. The old certainties of science, religion, and philosophy were giving way to questions that reached beyond the material. Einstein's relativity became a metaphor for a changing world where truth was not absolute but relative, shaped by perspective and context. It influenced not only physics but art, literature, and psychology. Painters like Picasso, writers like Proust, and thinkers like Bergson found echoes of relativity in their own explorations of perception and time. But behind the fame and admiration, Einstein's journey was one of deep isolation and relentless pursuit. He was not satisfied with simply explaining motion and light. He wanted to understand gravity, the oldest and most mysterious of forces, in the same language of relativity. Over the next decade, He worked tirelessly, revising, rethinking, and reimagining the structure of the universe itself. His study table became a battlefield of equations, each one a window into the invisible geometry of spacetime. In 1915, Einstein unveiled his general theory of relativity, a monumental expansion of his earlier work. Here, gravity was no longer a force acting at a distance, as Newton had described. Instead, it was the curvature of spacetime caused by mass and energy. Massive objects like stars and planets distorted the very fabric of space, and smaller bodies simply followed the curves. The universe was not static, it was elastic, alive, and in constant motion. Einstein's mathematics described how galaxies danced through this cosmic web, their paths shaped by the invisible folds of spacetime. When Einstein presented his theory to the Prussian Academy of Sciences, the world could barely grasp its depth. But its beauty was undeniable. The equations were elegant, concise, and profound. To test them, Einstein proposed a daring prediction: light passing near a massive object, like the sun, would bend as it followed the curved path of spacetime. This prediction awaited proof, and in 1919, during a total solar eclipse, it came. British astronomer Arthur Eddington's expedition confirmed the bending of starlight exactly as Einstein had predicted. Overnight, Einstein became a global figure, a scientist turned celebrity, his name synonymous with genius. The impact of this discovery was immense. It was as though humanity had been given new eyes to see the universe. Space was no longer flat, it could curve. Time was no longer steady, it could flow differently across the cosmos. Even light, the fastest thing known, was subject to the grand geometry of spacetime. Newspapers around the world proclaimed, "Newton's universe overthrown." Humanity stood in awe of a new reality, one that defied intuition but revealed the hidden harmony of the cosmos. Yet for Einstein, this recognition was only the beginning. He saw in relativity not just a theory of physics, but a key to understanding the unity of existence. He spoke of the universe in poetic terms, describing it as a symphony of curved space and flowing time. He believed that behind the complexity of the cosmos lay a simple, elegant order, a cosmic mind, that governed all things. His spirituality was not bound by religion but rooted in wonder, in the feeling of being small before the infinite beauty of creation. As relativity spread across the scientific world, it began to influence technology in ways Einstein could never have imagined. Decades later, the principles he discovered would power GPS satellites, guide spacecraft, and shape our understanding of black holes and the expanding universe. Even timekeeping, one of humanity's oldest practices, was transformed. Atomic clocks had to account for relativity to stay accurate, for time itself flowed differently at varying altitudes and speeds. Every time a satellite orbits Earth, it silently obeys Einstein's equations, proving his genius anew each passing second. But in those early years, Einstein's ideas faced not only admiration but also resistance. Many physicists clung to the comfort of Newtonian certainty. They accused Einstein of being a dreamer, of replacing physical reality with abstract mathematics. Yet, time after time, experiment after experiment, the universe sided with Einstein. The bending of light, the precession of Mercury's orbit, the redshift of distant galaxies, all confirmed his predictions. Relativity was no longer a theory, it was a fact of nature. Despite its triumph, Einstein's journey through relativity was deeply personal. It was a story of solitude, where the mind roamed beyond the boundaries of human experience. His notebooks were filled with scribbles, equations, and thought experiments that seemed more like poetry than science. He once said, "The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and all science." These words revealed the heart of relativity. It was not born from cold logic but from awe, from the childlike wonder that had followed him since his youth. As the 1920s arrived, Einstein's theories began to weave themselves into the very fabric of modern civilization. Universities taught relativity as a cornerstone of physics. Observatories recalculated their measurements of the cosmos. Philosophers debated the nature of time and perception. The world, once rigid and mechanical, now appeared fluid, interconnected, and alive. Einstein had not only given humanity new equations, he had given it a new vision of reality. Through relativity, Einstein revealed that even the most fundamental aspects of existence, space, time, light, and gravity, were part of one seamless whole. The cosmos was no longer an empty void sprinkled with stars, it was a living fabric in motion, curved and shaped by the very matter it contained. Humanity was not separate from this grand structure, we were participants in its dance. Every heartbeat, every orbit, every ray of light moved within the same cosmic rhythm. And so, as the world looked toward Einstein with admiration and wonder, few realized the depth of what he had achieved. He had taken the most basic questions. What is space? What is time? And given them answers that transcended imagination. His theory of relativity was not just a discovery, it was a mirror reflecting the unity of all things. It showed that knowledge and mystery could coexist, that even as we understand more, the universe only grows more beautiful in its complexity. In those quiet moments, when Einstein gazed at the night sky, he must have felt both proud and humbled. Proud that his mind had unlocked a secret of creation, and humbled by the infinite mystery that still stretched beyond. His theory had not diminished the magic of the universe, it had deepened it. And in doing so, Albert Einstein had forever changed how humanity saw the world, and how the world saw itself. The theory of relativity did more than alter equations. It changed the essence of how humanity perceived truth itself. Before Einstein, science sought certainty, a world governed by absolutes, fixed time, fixed space, predictable laws. But Einstein's revelations showed that the universe was far more subtle, flexible, and intertwined than anyone had ever dreamed. Space and time were no longer the stage upon which reality played out, they were part of the performance itself. Every movement of a planet, every flicker of a star, every heartbeat of a human was woven into this cosmic fabric. To understand motion was to understand the bending of space, to measure time was to trace the rhythm of the universe. The power of relativity lay not just in its mathematics, but in its imagination. It allowed humanity to step outside its limited perspective and glimpse the universe from a cosmic vantage point. Suddenly, the familiar world of clocks and rulers, once thought to be stable and universal, became relative to each observer. Time could run slower in one frame, faster in another. Distances could stretch or contract depending on motion. These effects, imperceptible in daily life, became profound at the speed of light or near massive celestial bodies. In this realization, Einstein had not only revealed a new physical law, he had uncovered a deeper truth about perception and reality itself. In the years that followed, the world began to witness how Einstein's vision reshaped both science and philosophy. The general theory of relativity provided a new understanding of gravity, predicting phenomena so strange they seemed almost beyond belief. It foretold that massive objects could warp space-time so dramatically that even light could not escape, a prediction that would later lead to the discovery of black holes. It suggested that the universe was not static but dynamic, expanding or contracting under the influence of its own energy. For centuries, humanity had gazed at the stars believing the heavens were fixed and eternal. Now, Einstein's equations whispered a different story. The cosmos itself was alive, growing, evolving, and perhaps destined to end. When astronomer Edwin Hubble later observed that galaxies were drifting away from each other, confirming that the universe was expanding, Einstein's theory stood vindicated again. The very fabric of reality was stretching. What had once been seen as an abstract theory became the foundation for modern cosmology. The Big Bang Theory, the understanding of the universe's origin, emerged directly from Einstein's work. His equations did not just describe the stars, they described the birth of time itself. But even as the scientific world marveled, Einstein himself remained deeply reflective. He understood the weight of what his theory had unleashed. His famous equation, E=mc$, carried within it both creation and destruction. It explained the immense energy that powered the stars, but it also held the potential for devastation if used by human hands. As the 20th century progressed and nuclear energy became a reality, Einstein watched with both pride and sorrow. He had unlocked a door to the deepest secrets of matter, but humanity's steps through that door were uncertain. He once wrote, "Our technology has exceeded our humanity." These words revealed a man torn between his love for knowledge and his fear of its misuse. Despite the challenges, Einstein's mind remained a beacon of wonder. He saw in the universe a grand design, a symphony of mathematical beauty that spoke of harmony and unity. His theory of relativity was, in many ways, his hymn to that harmony. He often described the sensation of discovery not as triumph, but as awe, a quiet connection to something infinite. His scientific work was his way of listening to the music of creation, a melody that only the most curious minds could hear. He believed that reason and imagination were two wings of the same bird, and without both, one could never truly soar. The cultural ripples of relativity extended beyond science. Artists began to paint in fragmented forms, capturing the fluidity of perspective and time. Writers explored nonlinear storytelling, echoing Einstein's revelations about the relativity of experience. Philosophers questioned whether there could ever be absolute truth when even time was relative. The entire intellectual landscape of the 20th century began to shift, shaped by a theory that transcended its scientific boundaries. Einstein had unintentionally become the bridge between science and art, logic and imagination, the measurable and the mystical. Yet, for Einstein, the theory of relativity was never about fame or recognition. He often said that his joy came not from applause, but from the clarity of understanding. He lived simply, his cluttered desk reflecting a mind always in motion. To him, relativity was not just a theory but a window, a way to peer into the architecture of existence. He once remarked, "I want to know God's thoughts, the rest are details." In that statement lay his entire philosophy, the pursuit of the ultimate truth hidden within the fabric of the universe. The later years of Einstein's life were marked by quiet persistence. Though he had changed the face of physics, he refused to stop searching. He became obsessed with finding a unified field theory, a framework that could merge gravity with electromagnetism, the large with the small, the cosmos with the atom. It was a quest for unity, for the one law that governed all others. Though he never succeeded, his efforts paved the way for modern physics to explore quantum gravity and string theory. Einstein knew that even failure in the pursuit of truth was a kind of victory. As time passed, new generations of scientists continued to test his ideas. Every experiment, every observation, every leap in technology only deepened the accuracy of his predictions. In 2015, a full century after Einstein proposed the general theory of relativity, scientists detected gravitational waves, ripples in spacetime caused by the collision of massive black holes. It was as if the universe itself had whispered, he was right. Those faint tremors, traveling billions of light years through the cosmos, were Einstein's theory made audible, a cosmic echo of his imagination reaching across time. Today, relativity is woven into the very fabric of human progress. GPS systems, satellite communications, and particle accelerators all rely on Einstein's equations to function accurately. Every second his ideas guide spacecraft, measure time, and define the parameters of reality itself. The ordinary act of navigating a city with a smartphone depends on the extraordinary mind of a man who once dreamed of riding a beam of light. But beyond the technology, beyond the scientific triumphs, Einstein's theory of relativity remains a human story. A story of curiosity, imagination, and courage. It teaches that truth is not always obvious, that reality can be stranger than imagination, and that even the smallest thought can reshape the universe. It reminds humanity that progress comes from questioning, not from certainty, and that wonder is the first step toward understanding. In many ways, the theory of relativity was Einstein's love letter to the cosmos. It spoke of connection, of how every particle, every planet, every beam of light is part of one grand structure. It told humanity that we are not separate observers of the universe, but threads in its infinite fabric. Each of us, bound by time and gravity, moves within the same spacetime that curves around stars and carries galaxies through the void. The same equations that describe the path of planets also describe the rhythm of our own existence. Einstein's legacy endures not because he solved every mystery, but because he reminded humanity of the beauty in the unknown. He saw the universe as a place of order and elegance, yet filled with endless questions waiting to be asked. The theory of relativity stands as a testament to that vision, a symbol of how the simplest curiosity can lead to the deepest revelations. As his life drew toward its end, Einstein looked back not as a conqueror of knowledge, but as a student of nature. He saw himself as part of the same wonder he sought to understand. In one of his final reflections, he wrote that the mysterious is the most beautiful thing we can experience. It is the source of all true art and science. And perhaps, in that statement, he revealed the ultimate meaning of relativity, that knowledge is not the end of wonder, but its beginning. Einstein's theory of relativity was more than an achievement. It was a revolution of thought, a transformation of how humanity perceives the universe and itself. It reached beyond physics into the soul of existence, binding science with spirit, fact with imagination. It taught us that space and time are not boundaries but bridges, connecting all things through the unseen harmony of nature. Even now, as we peer deeper into the cosmos with telescopes and probes, every discovery still carries Einstein's fingerprints. The bending of light around distant galaxies, the slow ticking of clocks in orbit, the waves that ripple through spacetime, all are living echoes of his mind. The thinker who once sat in quiet contemplation at a desk in Bern has become immortal, his thoughts woven into the structure of reality itself. And so the story of relativity continues, not as a closed chapter but as an endless journey. For every new question, every bold idea, every spark of curiosity that dares to challenge the known, carries the same spirit that once moved Albert Einstein. He did not merely change the laws of physics, he awakened humanity to the truth that everything, from the smallest atom to the farthest galaxy, is connected in one grand, magnificent dance, a dance of space, time, and light. In that revelation lies the true impact of relativity. It is not only about how the universe moves, but about how we understand our place within it. It is a reminder that even as we drift through the vastness of space, we are part of the same equation, the same rhythm, the same eternal story that Einstein so beautifully unveiled. His theory did not just describe the cosmos, it gave it meaning. It turned the silent void into a living poem of motion and light, forever written in the language of relativity. The fourth keynote in Einstein's journey represents the awakening of his human side, the moral and philosophical reflection that followed his scientific triumphs. As his theories began to reshape the modern world, Einstein's mind turned from the equations of the cosmos to the conscience of humanity. The same man who had revealed the hidden order of the universe now stood before the disorder of human nature, watching the rise of war, nationalism, and destruction. His discoveries had given humanity immense power, but he feared that wisdom had not grown with it. Einstein began to speak not only as a scientist but as a philosopher, a seeker of truth who believed that knowledge without compassion was a dangerous weapon. The world of the early 20th century was in turmoil. 2 world wars had torn apart nations, and the horrors of technology were being used not for creation but annihilation. Einstein, once a symbol of progress, was now haunted by the unintended consequences of his own work. When he wrote the letter to President Roosevelt in 1939, warning of Germany's possible development of atomic weapons, he had hoped to protect humanity. Yet, when the atomic bomb was finally used, he felt a deep sorrow. He later said, "I made one great mistake in my life. When I signed that letter." Those words came from a man who had gazed into the deepest laws of energy and realized that human hearts could twist that same energy into instruments of death. In these years, Einstein's voice became one of conscience. He spoke against violence, against racial division, against blind obedience to authority. His hair, wild and white, became a symbol of wisdom that refused to bow before power. He declared himself a citizen of the world, believing that humanity's loyalty must rise above flags and borders. Nationalism, he said, is an infantile disease. It is the measles of mankind. For Einstein, true progress was not in splitting atoms but in uniting minds. He believed that science should serve humanity, not control it, and that peace was not a dream, but a necessity for survival. Einstein's reflections went beyond politics. He often spoke of the spiritual dimension of existence, though not in the traditional religious sense. He did not believe in a personal God who intervened in human affairs, but in the order and beauty of the universe as a reflection of something divine. He once said, "Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind." By this, he meant that science gives us knowledge, but faith in the harmony of creation gives us purpose. He saw the universe as a grand, elegant design, one that inspired humility and wonder rather than arrogance. In his view, the true scientist was not a conqueror of nature but a participant in its mystery. As Einstein aged, the questions that occupied him became less about formulas and more about meaning. He wondered why human beings, capable of such intelligence, so often chose destruction over compassion. He questioned how a society could value power more than understanding. To him, education was not about producing machines of efficiency, but minds of empathy. The aim of education, he wrote, should be to train independently acting and thinking individuals who see in the service to humanity their highest life achievement. Those words revealed the essence of his philosophy, a belief that knowledge must always walk hand in hand with moral responsibility. Even in his later years, Einstein remained a quiet rebel. He refused political office, declined honors, and turned away from fame. His Princeton home was modest, filled with papers, violins, and silence. He continued to work on his unfinished dream of a unified field theory, not for recognition, but because he could not stop wondering. Yet, beyond his scientific pursuits, he became a guide for humanity's conscience. He spoke about the importance of simplicity, kindness, and curiosity, the small virtues that form the foundation of civilization. Try not to become a man of success, he advised, but rather try to become a man of value. Einstein's moral voice grew stronger as his physical strength faded. He saw humanity standing at a crossroads, one path leading toward enlightenment, the other toward extinction. The atom bomb had proven that knowledge without ethics could destroy everything it sought to understand. Einstein urged the world to choose compassion, to use science as a force for peace rather than domination. His message was clear: the universe may be governed by laws of physics, but human destiny depends on the laws of conscience. When he passed away in 1955, he left behind not only equations that reshaped science, but words that continue to shape humanity's moral vision. His brain was studied, his theories tested, yet his true legacy lived in his wisdom, the idea that the universe and the human heart are bound by the same mystery. He taught that curiosity is sacred, that imagination opens the door to truth, and that humility is the highest form of intelligence. In a world often blinded by power and greed, Einstein reminded humanity to look up, to wonder, and to remember that the same light that travels through the stars also lives within us. Einstein's fourth keynote, his moral awakening, was the culmination of his life's journey. It showed that genius is not only the ability to understand the universe, but the courage to guide it toward goodness. His voice still echoes across generations, a call for balance between reason and compassion, discovery and wisdom. In the end, Einstein's greatest lesson was not about relativity or light, but about humanity itself, that our future depends not on how much we know, but on how deeply we care. The fifth keynote in Einstein's story explores his complex relationship with humanity, fame, and his enduring role as a symbol of intellectual freedom. By the time the world came to know his name, Einstein had already become much more than a scientist. He was a legend, a thinker whose image and ideas transcended science and entered the realm of philosophy, art, and global identity. Yet, behind that iconic smile and messy hair stood a man deeply aware of the limits of his own brilliance, a man who carried the burden of fame with quiet humility. Einstein's life, during his later years, reflected both the light of admiration and the shadows of loneliness that come with greatness. The media and public adored him, turning him into a cultural phenomenon. His face appeared on magazines, newspapers, and even in cartoons. Everywhere he went, people sought his words as if they carried answers to life's greatest questions. But Einstein, who valued simplicity above all else, was often amused and uneasy about this attention. He once said, "It is strange to be known so universally and yet to be so lonely." For him, fame was not a crown but a cage. He believed that the true value of a person lay not in popularity, but in character and curiosity. The same man who unlocked the secrets of the universe preferred walking alone by a lake, playing his violin, or quietly solving problems in his study. Despite his discomfort with fame, Einstein used his influence to advocate for peace, justice, and equality. He became a global citizen, unafraid to speak out against tyranny and prejudice. During the rise of fascism in Europe, Einstein, who was Jewish, fled Germany and settled in the United States. He refused to remain silent while others suffered. He supported civil rights movements, spoke out against segregation, and stood beside thinkers like W.E.B. Du Bois and Paul Robeson. He said, "I do not believe in race as such. Race is a fraud. All men are brothers." In an age when such statements were risky, Einstein's voice became a moral compass, guiding people toward unity and compassion. He believed that science and humanity must coexist in harmony, and he warned against the dangers of technological progress without ethical responsibility. He saw the 20th century racing forward with inventions, but losing its moral direction. In letters and lectures, he reminded the world that the same human mind capable of building great machines could also build destruction. The lesson he tried to teach was that intelligence without empathy is incomplete, and that the survival of civilization depends not only on intellect but on conscience. "Our technology has surpassed our humanity," he lamented, recognizing that wisdom must evolve alongside knowledge. Einstein's wisdom also lay in his acceptance of uncertainty. While the world saw him as the man with all the answers, he often emphasized how little he truly knew. "The more I learn," he said, "the more I realize how much I don't know." This humility was the essence of his greatness. He viewed the universe not as a puzzle to be conquered, but as a mystery to be revered. For Einstein, every discovery opened new doors of wonder, and that sense of awe kept him forever young in spirit. Even as he aged, his curiosity remained undiminished. He once told a student, "Never lose a holy curiosity," believing that curiosity was the heartbeat of both science and the soul. In his final years at Princeton, Einstein lived a simple and contemplative life. His home was modest, filled with cluttered papers, unkempt hair, and an atmosphere of quiet thought. He continued to work on his unfinished dream, the unified field theory, an attempt to link all the forces of nature into a single, elegant framework. Though he never succeeded, he did not view it as failure. For Einstein, the pursuit of truth was more valuable than its attainment. He compared himself to a child who, on the shore of the infinite sea of knowledge, picks up pebbles of understanding one by one. This humility defined his final years, as he looked upon the vastness of existence with gratitude rather than regret. When he died in 1955, the world mourned not only a genius, but a human being who had taught humanity to see differently, to think deeper, to imagine freely, and to live consciously. Scientists continued his work, artists painted his likeness, and philosophers quoted his words. But beyond the honors and awards, Einstein's true legacy was a mindset, the courage to question, the freedom to imagine, and the wisdom to remain kind. His life became a timeless lesson that intelligence is not measured by how much we know, but by how deeply we seek truth and goodness. Even today, his words echo through classrooms, laboratories, and dreams. Imagination is more important than knowledge, he once said, and those words continue to inspire innovators and dreamers across the world. Einstein's vision reminds us that progress is not built on certainty but on curiosity, not on power but on wonder. His theories changed physics, but his spirit changed how humanity sees itself, a fragile yet capable species, reaching for understanding in a universe of infinite mystery. In the end, Einstein's story is not just the tale of a scientist. It is the story of a thinker who never stopped believing in the power of the human mind and the beauty of the human heart. His journey from a curious boy in Germany to the world's most celebrated intellect is a testament to what imagination, integrity, and compassion can achieve. Even decades after his passing, Einstein remains a light guiding humanity through the darkness of ignorance and fear. His equations may describe the cosmos, but his wisdom describes what it means to be human. The sixth keynote in Einstein's life reflects his lasting influence on science, culture, and the collective human spirit, a legacy that continues to expand long after his death. Einstein did not just leave behind a set of equations or theories, he left a philosophy of thought that reshaped the way people understand knowledge itself. His work became the foundation upon which modern physics stands, inspiring generations to question, to dream, and to look at the universe not as a cold mechanism, but as a living, dynamic mystery. Even decades after he passed away, his presence is felt in every field of study that seeks truth. He remains not just a figure of the past, but a constant reminder that human imagination has no boundaries. Einstein's impact on science cannot be overstated. His theories of relativity transformed physics from a rigid, mechanical view of the universe into a realm of flexibility, movement, and unity. The concept of spacetime, the understanding that gravity is the curvature of space rather than an invisible force, became the cornerstone of modern cosmology. Every time scientists observe black holes, gravitational waves, or the expansion of the universe, they are witnessing the living proof of Einstein's genius. The 2015 discovery of gravitational waves, a phenomenon Einstein predicted a century earlier, was not just a scientific achievement, but a message from the universe affirming the accuracy of his vision. Through such discoveries, his voice continues to echo across time, linking his imagination to the present and future of science. Yet Einstein's influence extended far beyond laboratories and equations. He changed how humanity thinks about thinking itself. His approach to problem solving, relying on intuition, imagination, and thought experiments, showed that true understanding often begins not with data but with wonder. He imagined himself chasing a beam of light, and from that vision came the theory of relativity. He questioned what would happen if gravity disappeared or if one stood at the edge of the universe. These questions, simple yet profound, proved that creativity is not a luxury in science but its very essence. He broke the wall between art and science, teaching that both are expressions of the same human desire to understand beauty and truth. Einstein's influence also reached the realm of culture and philosophy. His ideas about time and space reshaped not only science but also art, literature, and cinema. Writers and filmmakers began exploring parallel realities, time travel, and alternate dimensions, concepts that trace their roots back to Einstein's theories. Painters found inspiration in relativity's fluid perception of space, and musicians drew parallels between the harmony of notes and the harmony of nature. Einstein himself loved music deeply. His violin was a companion through many of his scientific reflections. He once said, "If I were not a physicist, I would probably be a musician." In this way, Einstein's legacy connected reason and emotion, science and art, showing that knowledge and beauty are two sides of the same truth. But perhaps the most powerful part of Einstein's legacy lies in the moral example he set. In a world often divided by politics and prejudice, Einstein stood for universal values: peace, tolerance, and compassion. He refused to let nationalism or ideology define him. Instead, he called himself a citizen of the world. His advocacy for civil rights in America, his opposition to war, and his support for humanitarian causes showed that genius means nothing without empathy. Einstein used his fame not to elevate himself but to amplify the voices of others. He believed that science should serve humanity, not dominate it, and that moral progress must accompany technological advancement. His words, "Peace cannot be kept by force, it can only be achieved by understanding," remain as relevant today as when he first spoke them. Einstein also transformed education by redefining what it means to learn. He criticized systems that valued memorization over imagination and conformity over curiosity. He believed that schools should awaken the mind, not suppress it. His statement, "Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school," revealed his belief that the true goal of learning is to inspire independent thinking. This philosophy has since influenced educators, reformers, and innovators around the world. His life became a model for students and thinkers, reminding them that questions are often more valuable than answers. Even in death, Einstein's influence continued to grow. His name became synonymous with genius, yet his humility remained his greatest lesson. He never saw himself as a hero or prophet. He was a man endlessly fascinated by the unknown. His ashes were scattered according to his wishes, but his ideas were scattered far wider, into classrooms, observatories, laboratories, and hearts across the globe. Scientists continue to test, expand, and evolve his theories, proving that true genius is not static but alive, evolving through the minds it inspires. His dream of a unified understanding of the universe still guides physicists searching for a theory of everything. In every new discovery about dark matter, quantum gravity, or the origins of the cosmos, Einstein's shadow gently lingers, like a mentor watching from beyond time. What makes Einstein's legacy truly timeless is that it belongs to everyone. He transcended borders, languages, and generations. His ideas were not confined to academia. They became part of global culture, part of the human imagination itself. For every child who looks up at the stars and wonders how they shine, for every scientist who questions the nature of time, for every dreamer who believes in the power of thought, Einstein lives on. His image, his words, and his wisdom continue to inspire not just scientists, but thinkers of all kinds who dare to question the ordinary. In the vast story of human progress, Einstein stands as a symbol of the harmony between mind and spirit, between curiosity and compassion. His discoveries reached across galaxies, yet his teachings reached inward, reminding humanity of its shared responsibility to seek truth and kindness. The legacy he left behind is not just written in textbooks, but in the way we think, dream, and believe in the impossible. Einstein once said, "The important thing is not to stop questioning." That single line captures the eternal flame he passed to the world, a flame that continues to burn in every corner of human curiosity. Through that flame, Einstein's legacy will never fade. As long as there are questions to ask, mysteries to uncover, and imaginations to ignite, the thinker who reshaped the universe will remain alive in the minds of all who seek to understand it. His work began with light, and fittingly, his influence continues to illuminate the world. The seventh keynote in Einstein's journey represents his transformation from a man of science into an eternal symbol of human wisdom, a legacy that transcends time, discipline, and even generations. By the end of his life, Einstein had become more than a physicist. He had become a philosopher of existence, a moral voice, and a mirror reflecting humanity's potential for both brilliance and destruction. His name became shorthand for genius, yet his true greatness was never just in his equations. It was in his endless search for truth, guided by humility and wonder. Einstein's final years were a blend of quiet contemplation, intellectual pursuit, and deep reflection on the meaning of life itself. He had unlocked the laws of the universe, but he understood that the mysteries of human nature were just as profound. In his later life, Einstein often spoke about peace, purpose, and the moral responsibility that comes with knowledge. He had lived through 2 world wars, witnessed the rise and fall of empires, and seen science turn into both a tool of enlightenment and a weapon of destruction. This duality troubled him deeply. The same principles that explained the stars had given birth to nuclear power, and with it, the atomic bomb. Einstein spent his final years warning humanity about the dangers of using science without conscience. He became an advocate for global unity, believing that survival depended on cooperation rather than competition. "The splitting of the atom has changed everything," he said. "Accept our way of thinking." Through these words, he reminded the world that progress without wisdom is perilous, and that intelligence must be guided by empathy. Even as his health declined, Einstein continued to work tirelessly. His pursuit of a unified field theory, a theory that could merge all fundamental forces of nature, became a lifelong quest that remained unfinished. Yet, for him the beauty of science was not in the completion of discovery, but in the journey toward understanding. He often compared himself to a child wandering on the shore of the cosmic ocean, finding a few shiny pebbles of truth while the great sea of mystery stretched before him. This humility, this deep awareness of the limits of human understanding, made him not just a scientist but a sage. Einstein's mind had traveled farther than anyone before him, yet he remained grounded, aware that even the greatest intellect is but a spark in the vast darkness of the unknown. In his final days at Princeton, Einstein lived a simple, quiet life. He refused fame, honors, and wealth, finding comfort in solitude and thought. His desk, cluttered with papers and notes, became the last battlefield of his imagination. He knew his time was short, yet he continued to write equations and reflect on the harmony of the universe. When asked about his beliefs, he often replied that he did not believe in a personal God but in Spinoza's God, a divine order revealed in the laws of nature. For Einstein, spirituality was not about worship but about wonder. The elegance of the cosmos, the balance of energy, and the beauty of logic were, to him, the true reflections of divinity. He saw no boundary between science and spirituality. Both were paths to understanding the same eternal mystery. Einstein's death in 1955 marked the end of a life, but not the end of his influence. His body was cremated, his ashes scattered, but his mind remained immortal through the ideas that continue to guide modern thought. Every generation since has rediscovered him in new ways. Scientists through relativity, philosophers through his reflections on existence, and dreamers through his devotion to imagination. He became a universal figure, belonging to no nation or culture but to all of humanity. His image, with its wild hair and gentle eyes, became a symbol of the pure thinker, the rebel dreamer who dared to challenge the impossible. Yet beyond the icon, Einstein's real gift was his message, that the greatest power in the universe is not knowledge, but curiosity guided by kindness. Today, Einstein's presence can be felt everywhere, in the satellites orbiting Earth, the computers running complex calculations, the physics that governs space travel, and even in the moral questions of our age. His theories continue to shape our understanding of black holes, time, and the origin of the universe. His words continue to guide thinkers, innovators, and leaders who seek meaning beyond material success. In a world driven by speed and competition, Einstein's voice still whispers a timeless truth: slow down, think deeply, and never stop wondering. Look deep into nature, he once said, and then you will understand everything better. That advice remains as relevant now as it was in his lifetime. A reminder that the answers we seek in the stars often begin within ourselves. Einstein's final keynote is, therefore, not about science, but about the eternal dialogue between mind and soul. He showed that human progress depends not on domination but on understanding, not on power but on peace. His life taught that imagination is sacred, that curiosity is infinite, and that humility is the highest form of intelligence. In every equation he wrote, there was a hint of poetry. In every speech he gave, a tone of compassion. His legacy teaches us that true greatness is not found in fame or fortune, but in the courage to think differently and to love deeply. As the world continues to advance into new frontiers, artificial intelligence, space exploration, quantum computing, Einstein's wisdom remains a guiding light. He reminds humanity that knowledge must always be balanced with conscience and that science, at its core, is an act of love for truth. The thinker who once shook the world continues to inspire it, generation after generation, as a timeless symbol of what the human mind and spirit can achieve together. Einstein's journey ended with his heart still curious and his thoughts still reaching for the stars. His life was not just a chronicle of discoveries, but a testament to the infinite power of human imagination. In every mind that questions, in every dream that defies the ordinary, Einstein lives on. He began his journey as a boy with a compass, marveling at invisible forces, and he left the world as a light guiding humanity through the vast and beautiful mystery of the universe.